Hello, everybody. I'm Mel Doerr, the Aloha Shirt Psychic, and I want to thank Aiden Davis because he told me about this wonderful lady, Michelle Clare, and he asked if I'd have her on my show, and I said, absolutely. So I'm so excited. We just met right before the show. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, Mel. I am so great, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Normally, when I do this, I don't read things much. I mean, I read psychically, but I don't read intros. But this is a really great little bio, and I thought I would read it and share it with everybody so they know a little bit about you. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Michelle Clare is a speaker, author, and certified medium and has been featured on Coast to Coast AM, Amazon Prime, the Shift Network. Got to be careful when I say that one. The Shift Network, Humanities Team, and Gaia TV. She's also an angel intuitive, spiritual coach, medical intuitive, and energetic healer, as well as being certified in human interaction technology. Over the course of 11 years, Michelle survived three near death experiences, which profoundly transformed her life and deepened her connection to the spirit world. Michelle navigates beyond realms beyond the physical with clarity, compassion, and purpose, bringing through messages from loved ones in spirit, angels, and guides. Her journey is one of resilience, divine connection, and awakening. She is passionate about sharing powerful insights on soul plans, near death experiences, and the delicate terrain surrounding suicide, offering hope, healing, and a deeper understanding of life's sacred purpose. That's very impressive, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Mel. It's been quite a journey.
It has for me too. I started doing my psychic work officially when I was 18, but I think I did my first psychic reading at 12 years old. And I've been doing it my entire life, and I'm 71. So I've been at this a very long time.
Absolutely. It was quite a path you chose.
Yeah, right. How did you get started in this, Michelle?
Well, when I was 12, also, my grandfather transitioned, and I started noticing that he and I were still having communication and conversation. I would share it with my mom, and my mom would say, well, that's what you think he would say if he was still here. And so I realized not everyone else was having this connection and these communications. And I just kind of went on. I started to keep it to myself and kept it between grandpa and I. Later on in life, my grandma passed. We were having the same situation, shared it with my mom. She thought the exact same thing. That's what you think she would say if she was here. And then I had my first NDE, and each NDE that I had just opened it up more and more until I got to my third near death experience. And in that one, I was literally given the choice to stay or go. But the agreement to stay was that I would start using my mediumship to help people.
Wow. I'm an old spiritualist from way back when, and a lot of people think that mediumship is talking to the dearly departed. But as a spiritualist, we look at all the psychic forms, whether it's all the clairs, whether it's intuition as a form of mediumship, because really all a medium does is take what comes from spirit and passes it on. It's kind of the same as channeling, if you think about it that way.
Yeah.
So I always like to clarify that when people ask about it. So uh, you know um, so how did you get on Coast to Coast AM? I don't watch much television, so I'll let you identify what that is.
Yeah, Coast to Coast AM. It is with George Norrie. It used to be Art Bell's radio show before that, and I had the opportunity to meet him and some people who worked with him quite a few years ago at a Soul Summit type event, and in that point in time, I got asked to be on there. So I've been on there a couple of times. I love it. I get to do live readings on the air at the end. We have great conversation, but it's really quite an expansive show.
I used to do live television years ago, and we would answer questions for the call-ins, and we had to get as many questions as we could in an hour. And I think our record was like 65 in 1 hour. So you're always thinking ahead. That I know.
Yeah, yeah. It is kind of fun though. I like that energy. I have a Mondays with Michelle show on YouTube, and Aiden helps me with that. But it's the same thing. Like the answers, the questions come in, and it's like, here we go, boom, boom, boom.
A lot of psychics in the community don't like pre-recorded, but I happen to like it because we can stop the recording. Where when you're live, is I'm used to live TV, so
Yeah.
you know. Anyway, and now also, so Amazon Prime, what is that? I know what Amazon Prime is, but
Yeah, it is a special called Life After Life. And it's really talking about the one that I'm on. It's a series. It's about heaven. What do you find when you get to that heavenly realm? What does that look like? What can people expect?
okay. And how about the Shift Network?
The Shift Network, I have been on a couple different summits with them, one on ancestral healing, one on near-death experiences. And then in April, I will be coming out with a 7-week live course on how to connect to your angels.
Now, if somebody wanted to take that course, how would they be able to do that?
Yes, they can go to my website under the events page. There's no link for it yet. The link will come out in February, but just register through my website.
Okay. And let's see, Humanities Team, what is that?
Yep, that is also an online platform, and I've created a course with them called the Soul Plan. And this is a 5-segment series that takes you into what is your soul plan? Why are you here? Really helping people to understand the bigger lessons that are happening in their lives.
And how about Gaia?
With Gaia, I was on that TV show talking about near-death experiences.
Wow. Okay, I've got a question here. A couple years ago, I had cancer in my throat. It was on my tonsil, and the tumor behind it was 2.7 centimeters by 1.7. So it's about like that.
Wow.
Tip of your thumb. I didn't have any symptoms at all. And they took 13 lymph nodes here out of my neck. Luckily, I didn't have to have chemotherapy or radiation. But something really bothered me. And somebody said to me, well, you contracted for that. And I had a real problem with that because I would be like, who contracts for cancer? Who contracts to be rounded up and sent to concentration camps? So can you clarify that? Because, then somebody told me that, and I'm a medical intuitive as well.
Uh-huh.
And somebody told me that I had cancer because I was angry. And I'm like, I'm angry because you told me that.
Right. You're like, you're right. I'm very angry.
Because I don't believe in making, diseases, they're just part of the human experience. And I don't believe in making the one suffering from the disease the victim. And so I try to step out of that. And so so when somebody asks that question, like I just asked,
Yeah.
I don't know if there is an answer, and I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's why I'm here. Let's go for it. I am here to be put on the spot. No. So my understanding with spirit is I've really dove into this, and I started dealing and diving into soul plans really when my life partner passed by suicide, because I was very much like, I don't want to be the victim of this. What is happening? What is going on here? So as I've done this work with spirit, what I've come to find out is that about 60% of our life is created in a blueprint of things that are very likely they are going to happen to us. Like, I will be the mother of these 3 children. They will show up here on this planet. My life partner will be my life partners. There are some things we're going to be born to parents. The specific parents. So some things are already in this blueprint. But then we get here and we still have about 40% free will. So some of it's already etched in stone. But it's like looking at a building. We have an outside structure. Here are some of the lessons your soul wants to learn. Here are some of the challenges you want to have on this planet. Good times, bad times, all of it included. But so we have a structure on the outside. We get to decide with our free will, how are we going to decorate it on the inside? Are we going to paint the wall red? Are we going to throw down a blue carpet? Are we going to, right? Maybe we knock out a wall. And because of this, it's not all etched in stone. We are not forced to be here on some level.
I look at it as more like a tabula rasa or a
Mhm.
gestalt, which is the frame. So tabula rasa is the blank sheet.
Mhm.
You get to write certain things on it. That blueprint you're talking about, I still think that, even if it's in the blueprint, there are certain things that we can do. Like, for example, my intuition saved my life because 3 doctors told me this is not cancer. Normally, I'd be like, "Okay, nothing to worry about," but something kept saying, "No, no,
Right.
no." So the lesson was to listen to my intuition, is which I teach in classes. But I think that, I was able to maybe knock out one of those walls or
Right.
or erase a little piece of that blueprint.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I would agree with you on that. We do have free will while we're here. We have intuition, which is constantly talking to us. We all have this ability to connect and really follow like the guidance of our higher self, God, spirit, the divine, whatever your name for the higher power is, right? And because of that, I would agree with you. I would also want to add to it like this: not everything is etched in stone. Some of the things were etched in. Your parents are your parents. There is nothing you can do to change that at this point in time, right? So there are things that are for sure set in stone and going to happen this way. As far as cancer, do I think that somebody necessarily chooses and says, I want to fight this disease or I want to die from this disease? I mean, my mom fought breast cancer for almost 20 years by the time she passed from it. There was no part of her that I looked at and I thought, oh, she's wanting to do this. On the contrary, right? But there are a couple of things that were going on with her. So there was genetic DNA that she was born into. And when we're in spirit world, we do get the opportunity to kind of choose the genetic DNA that we're born into. So we know some people have a higher risk of having ALS, some have a higher risk of cancer, right? It doesn't mean that it's for sure going to happen, but we already know there's probably more of a likelihood depending on that. So we're really coming into planet Earth, body, mind, and spirit. We have this DNA package that we've been born into, depending on who our parents are and kind of that lineage. A lot of times we show up here because we're here to put an end to the ancestral trauma. So maybe you come from a long line of alcoholics and you're like, I'm not going to drink. Like I've seen what it's done to the family. And so we're now creating a new chapter in that line.
Um, I think you hit it. I think the blueprint could very well be genetics. And, that's how science explains it anyway. And I believe in bridging the gap between science and the metaphysical because I'm a science nerd as well,
Uh-huh.
or a science geek. Um, and so, you know, a lot of times I think if we know about that blueprint, then maybe we can take steps to the best of our ability to prevent it from happening. And you said free will, and I totally believe in free will.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to touch on is suicide. I have a friend, Linda Pasha, and her son lost his life to suicide. And she wrote a book, Protecting Ourselves from Suicide, and we give it away free. And we're very active in talking to people who have lost loved ones to suicide, or maybe people even thinking about suicide. And it really bothered me when I heard people say that those who lose their life to suicide don't cross right over to the light. They can't go to the light. And that is the biggest crock of BS I've ever heard in my life. Uh, I'm sure that Linda's son, and anytime she comes for a session, he always comes through.
Yeah.
Like your partner came through today. And, I see them with the light. I see them surrounded by the golden light. And I just would like to know your take on that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. They go into the light and they are met with love and compassion, just like, somebody who's lived a very holy life or spiritual life or whatever. That love and compassion is available to all of us. I had been working as a medium for quite a few years before he transitioned from suicide. And so the good news for me on that was I knew I was already bringing through people's loved ones who were in the love, in the light, in the compassion, still connected to them. I would like to add as a side note, I have never read for anyone on the other side who passed by suicide that said to me, I was exactly in my right mind when I did that. They're not in their right mind when they do that. They're not thinking about their family who's going to grieve. They're not thinking about the pain, right? And so, as a medium, I've never brought through someone who was like, I was absolutely in my right mind. It doesn't happen that way. So I had that background and I understood how heaven meets them with love and compassion, just like other people are met when they transition. But the challenge for me with my loved ones passing by suicide was he was showing no signs. No one suspected it. We all knew that he had depression and that there were times where it would hit him heavier than other times. And at this point in time, when he chose to do this, I was literally out of town. And the way that, and I will just share this with you because I know you'll really feel this. So when he would have depression, he would go home, turn off his phone, turn off his computer, go to bed for 2 or 3 days, and then kind of reemerge ready to face with the world again. And so when I was at the airport that day getting ready to fly back, he wasn't responding to the text. And I thought, well, he should be at work. He's probably with a client. I went home that night, had not heard from him, called, texted, nothing. The next morning, still nothing from him. I called his work. They said he had called in sick. And we were supposed to go to a party that night. I drove by where he lived and I saw his car and his daughter's car outside. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to knock on the door. He's okay. He's at the house. And then that night, the party that we were supposed to go to, obviously he didn't show up. I got back to my place around midnight. And as I was in my bathroom getting ready for bed, he literally came into me in mediumship. I could see the shirt that he was wearing, the shorts that he was in. My body started to convulse as it starts to go out when we're like in that shock energy. He looked at me and he said, "You sure are beautiful." And somehow I stumbled to the bed. I felt him lay down next to me and he said, "I wanted to be the one to tell you." And that was how I found out that he had transitioned by suicide.
Wow. Wow. And then that's called claircognizance. It's like we know, but we don't know how we know or what we know. We just know. I mean, he told you. But
Yeah,
then I still think when we find out on this plane, even
yeah,
though we know, it's still a shock,
right. Yeah,
and then you go through the grief. When I've, talked to spirits on the other side that have lost their life to suicide, many times they'll say it was an end to their pain.
yeah,
And they don't really realize the tsunami effect that it has on those left behind in that particular moment because the depression is just so painful for them. I think also what's come through to me from spirit is the personality of the person that's taking their life due to suicide and the reasons. Now,
mhm,
some people threaten to do it because they are narcissistic and attention seeking. And I think if those people succeed, then they got to work with getting to the light. Uh,
mhm.
but I think, like in your partner's case, it was an end to his pain, and
Yeah,
uh, so I think you have to look at each case as different. But I always try to inspire hope when I have people who have lost loved ones due to suicide. I've lost a very good friend due to suicide. And I beat myself up for it as a psychic, thinking if I was so psychic, why didn't I see this? And I even had people ask me that. Well, if you're so psychic, why didn't you see it? And and she showed no signs of it whatsoever.
I've been asked that same question by people too. And I would say as a psychic medium, it's really hard that you didn't see it coming. But I would also say in this life, there are things that we're not supposed to know, and that his suicide wasn't etched in stone. And because of that, I wasn't supposed to know, and I wasn't supposed to see it coming or be able to prevent it or stop it.
Um, a family member of mine tried 3 times and almost succeeded. And I called the suicide awareness hotline. And this is before my friend wrote the book. And I talked to a guy on the phone for almost an hour and a half, and I believe that man was an angel that was sent,
Mhm.
because I said, I'm afraid to mention it to my family member because I don't want to trigger them. I don't want to do anything like that. And the person I talked to on the phone said, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it usually. And you don't have to worry about triggering anything. Uh, the thing to do is to try to get them to help to prevent it from happening. But sometimes we just don't know.
Yeah.
And you know, I that right there was so healing for me because I no longer beat myself up for not being able to see my friend's suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, I was devastated, devastated. And
Hmm.
so, I,
Well, and I think it's really important that we talk about that because even as a psychic medium, as somebody who had worked with grief, who has this connection that's maybe more advanced than some others to the other side, I had no way to bypass the human grief and the human trauma of his transition. There was no magic way to go over it, under it, around it. It was literally just step by step through it. And there were those days where, like everyone who suffered loss, I didn't feel like I even knew my name.
it's moment at a time.
Hmm.
It's moment at a time. Um, you know, I it's funny. This brings up another question. I just watched a movie. It was an older movie on the airplane flying home from Iceland. With Susan Sarandon, and I can't remember the name of it, but she had some debilitating disease. I mean, they didn't say what it was in the movie. I think it looked like ALS or something. And she invited her two daughters who didn't get along and her family to her home because she was going to end her life because she knew what was happening. And she was already kind of progressed with the disease. And so, you know, if there is a such thing, she decided that she wanted her family surrounding her, and she had a beautiful death. And the movie is a great movie. So I guess the question would be, what about those cases where people are terminally ill and rather than succumb to a horrible disease, they decide when it's time and they take their own life? See, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all.
I don't either. Medical assisted suicide, Canada is number one in leading the world with it right now. And British Columbia has the highest rate of that. And here's kind of how I feel about that. If you have a terminal illness, right? The challenge is sometimes people want this out and it's not necessarily for an appropriate reason. My relationship ended, I'm in financial trouble, I'm, you know what I mean, there are things like that. But if you have a terminal illness and you have the opportunity to get to those later stages of it in transition with peace and family around you, I will tell you, I personally am not opposed to that. I have spoken with a couple of years ago at the IANS conference for the International Association for Near Death Studies. I met a reverend who is from Canada, and he was working in the hospitals with people who were having the medically assisted suicide. And he said that he honestly needed to stop. He said at the end of the day, he almost felt like he wasn't sure that it was the right thing because he said their souls were still learning while they were here, and so were the people around them. So it's really interesting to see the different viewpoints on it. Nobody's looking at it, I mean, from the people I know, as quote a sin, as people would consider sins, but it is about kind of soul growth and what feels right for you and your family.
But who decides that?
I think it's the individual that has to make that decision.
Exactly. You know,
We do our
I
beautiful pets. We don't make our beautiful animals suffer, you
that's
know.
right.
And I feel like we don't need to make people suffer either.
I totally agree with that. You know, when I had cancer, I didn't want to die because I said I'm going to live. But I had made up my mind that if it got to the point where it was terminal and there was no quality to my life, then I knew what I would do as well. But I'm a fighter. And I almost died in May. I had peritonitis, my colon ruptured.
Oh my gosh.
I was in the hospital like 4 times in 7 weeks. I lost 30 pounds. And ultimately, they took out that much of my colon, but thank goodness no colostomy. There were a couple of days I didn't think I was going to make it, but you know, Linda Grindle is a very good friend of mine, and her cousin Regina, who's Comanche, died of ALS.
Mhm.
and she fought to the bitter end because she wanted to fight. That was her choice. But she came to me in a vision, and I wasn't even thinking of Regina at the time. And she said, "You will be victorious." And then she took me to this plane and showed me the Comanches dancing. And I figured that that was the dance of healing and the dance of life. And all of the ancestors were around her. When I started describing them to Linda, she said, "Yeah, that's what Grandma looked like. That's what this one looked like." So it was Regina who came through that vision, I think, was healing for me and assured me that no, it was not my time.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
um, so near death experience, you said you had your first one. How old were you?
When I had that first one, I was 25, newly married, no kids. I was in the hospital visiting my sister in law who had just had a baby that day. And I was in the hallway talking to her RN, who happened to be my friend from high school. So as we were catching up, I had a massive seizure. I don't remember the seizure. I remember opening my eyes and I was laying with my head in my grandmother's lap. And my grandmother had passed a couple years before. She just looked like the youngest version of herself, smiling at me, holding me with this timelessness, this blissful love and compassion all around her. And as I was laying there next to her, I looked up, and next to her was this angel, which appeared to be about 12 feet tall. I looked for the feather wings. I was raised Catholic, so I wanted to see those feather wings. Yeah. And these wings were made of light. They weren't actually made of feathers, and they moved kind of like the aurora borealis, and they spanned eternity. I remember being very much drawn into her presence. And I thought to myself, I thought, what is your name? And she answered me. She said, my name's Madeline. I'm one of your guardian angels. And I was surprised because at that point in my life, I didn't know about telepathic communication. So I was like, oh, how does she know what I'm thinking? The next thing I know, I hear someone yelling, code, 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 because I had quit breathing while I was having the seizure. And in the hospital, they had called the code team. I am dropped back into my body. Feels like a 2-story jump back from light as a feather to feeling like 1,000 pounds of cement. But the density of this planet really got my attention in that time. I remember trying to lift my arm. It felt like my arm weighed about 500 pounds after coming from that heavenly realm. They admitted me into the hospital and they never found out why I had that seizure. And I had never had another one since then. So when I look back on that NDE, I realized that it was really this heightened awakening to the angelic realm. It taught me a lot of lessons about heaven. I didn't know I was going that day, but my grandma and my angel were waiting right there with me. So as a medium, I love to share that with people. No one dies alone. I don't care if you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert by yourself. You're not leaving this planet alone. You have angels, loved ones, life guides who are coming to support you and surround you, right? And so I started to learn and have like this awakening. That was back in 2000. So I didn't know the term near death experience. I didn't know exactly what had happened. I just knew I had an experience that was more vivid than my daily life here on planet Earth.
I had triple bypass surgery 13 and a half years ago. Uh, and, I was a smoker. I grew up in Kentucky, and, all my dad's family had tobacco farms. So, you smoked.
Yeah.
Uh, back in those days, the doctor would tell you to smoke, that it calmed your nerves, but we know now. Back then, they would just say, oh, it makes you short winded, but that's okay. Now we know differently. But I quit smoking, and I I had just woke up from surgery, and I saw a friend of mine who was in spirit. She died of emphysema, and she had a cigarette in her mouth, and she took it out, and it broke, and she went. And then on the way down to surgery, um, they give you the happy juice, but I wasn't hallucinating or anything. I just felt like I had about 20 martinis. And I saw my Hawaiian teacher who had passed into spirit, and she'd call me by my Hawaiian name, Li'i. It's Li'ipuakua, which means little flower spirit. And she said, Li'i, you're going to pull through this. Your work's not done. And those are the two experiences I had. And, when I told people about it, they were like, "Oh, it was probably the medication. It was probably this." I said, "It doesn't make a difference whether it was medication induced, whatever it was, those messages were profound for me, and they came from spirit."
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your second NDE?
So my second NDE happened in May of 2006. And at that point in time, I had three little kids. I had a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a 6-week-old infant. So after I had my son, I had a lot of complications, and I was in the hospital the majority of those 6 weeks on IV antibiotics and, all sorts of different problems happening. Finally, the doctors decided they were going to do a D&C, which is a process where they clear out the uterus, and that I would be fine. 45-minute outpatient procedure. I'd go home. So
Can I just say something psychically? I don't mean to interrupt you. Did they nick an artery or a vein where you're hemorrhaging?
they missed it by a millimeter, literally.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's what I picked up.
Look at you being so psychic there. Absolutely. So the night before, I had this pit in my stomach. I thought, oh, I don't think I should do this. I don't want to do this. And then my mind was just like, just do it. 45 minutes, you'll be done. You can go home from the hospital. So I had had anesthesia before. And whenever I've had it, it's just a blank. No dreaming, no memory, just nothing. Blank. I go in, I talk to the doctor, the anesthesiologist. Again, they reassure me everything's going to be fine and quick and easy, and I'll be home. So I counted backwards for the anesthesiologist. And the next thing I know, I'm looking over, and my white German Shepherd, who was 102 pounds, that had passed away a couple years before.
Dog I saw, because when you were talking, a dog came to me, and the color white popped into my mind. And I was going to ask you about that. So that's the dog that showed up.
Absolutely. I look over in the operating room, and she's walking into the operating room, lays her head on my gurney, because she would always check on me. She's like looking at me, and we were gone. And we were on this magnificent beach where there were colors that we don't have here. There were emotions we don't have here. Everything was lit up from within, like every drop of water, every molecule on every leaf, plant, flower, tree. It was absolutely just blissful. And she and I are on this beach. She looks healthy. She's kind of glowing. She's about 2 years old. We're telepathically communicating. She's happy that I'm there. And we are just running and running. At some point in time, I start to notice, the sand's not hard. It feels kind of like clouds. I'm not getting hot. I'm not getting tired. I'm not getting thirsty. And the funny thing about this is, like, human Michelle, I hate to run. I tell my friends, if you see me running, call 911. That is not me going out for a jog, right? But here I am in this heavenly realm, jogging down the beach with my dog. And in that moment, I started to feel my son, who was 6 weeks old at the time, and he was at the house with my mom, calling to me because he knew I was getting ready to leave. I remember going to him. I remember saying, I'm not going to leave you. I will find a way to stay. And I started praying. I did not know what else to do. So I started saying, I need help. It's not my time. My kids still need me. At that moment, I was transported back into the operating room, and Jesus came in. And Jesus came in as my best friend, not confess your sins, not pray to me, not Jesus came in as my best friend, and this operating room lit up in this golden white light. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in post-op. My 45-minute procedure had turned into a 3.5 hour emergency surgery because they had ruptured my artery, ruptured my uterus in 2 places, and missed an artery by a millimeter. Here's the thing, my medical records were wiped. I never got complete medical records from that surgery, so I don't actually know all the details. But I was in the hospital for another week after that.
Intuitively, I think they did nick an artery, and sometimes back in those days, they just didn't say anything about it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, because they were so close, they could not stitch it. They had to pack the area in the side wall.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I know.
As you were talking about your white German Shepherd, my dog Lucky came in, and that's why I looked back, because she was nudging my arm. She wanted me to pet her.
Oh, she said, I'm here, Dad.
Yeah, I think your dog must have communicated with her, your dog in spirit. She just walked out. But
oh, how sweet.
Yeah. And so, how about your third NDE?
So my third one happened on 11/1/11. So for people who like numbers, that's a lot of ones right there. The house that I was in, we had 14-foot ceilings and about 12 feet off the ground. I had battery operated candles. And so I'd put the batteries in every night. They would turn on and they would glow for, 4 or 5 hours, turn off by themselves. My kids were 5, 8, and 10 at the time, and my younger two were home. And I said to them, as soon as I put this last candle up, we're going to go get your sister from school. I remember starting to climb up the ladder. As I got towards the top, I felt it start to shift. And as it started, yeah, I remember, I thought, this is going to hurt. The next thing I know, I was ripped out of my body, not in a painful way, but a fast way, like bungee cord way, turned around facing my body in the ladder, suspended in the air, like the freeze frame in the movie, kind of just like choop, everything froze in time. And I was standing with these three people that I did not know, but they felt like family or friends. I felt like they knew everything about me. They knew my whole life. There was an Asian man, an Egyptian woman, and a Hawaiian man. And as I stood in this beautiful, timeless, blissful space with them, they said to me, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I was in my head a little bit. I'm like, well, this is interesting. I have forever to decide what I want to do when my body's going to hit the floor in a second. But nobody was rushing me to make any decisions. And as I'm watching my body in the ladder suspended in the air, I see a different angel come in. And this angel is dressed in red and gold. And as soon as I see this angel, I know this angel is here to either shift something so that I stay or to take me home to that heavenly realm. As I am watching this, my attention is brought to my younger two kids who are in the house. And as I see my kids, I realize I'm not done wanting to be their mom. There are more experiences that I want to have here. And so I choose to stay. As I make this kind of a known choice, again, telepathically, I'm downloaded with information. I'm told, okay, but your marriage is probably going to end in divorce. You have more trauma coming. Like they were, and part of the deal was you've got to go back and you've got to do your mediumship and help people in the way that you can as a medium. And I remember being in that heavenly realm where everything felt perfect and being like, okay, sounds good. I've got this. Yep, send me in. Not really realizing the gravity of what divorce after a 25-year marriage was going to feel like, of what the death of my partner through suicide was going to feel like, and how it was going to hit me on this human plane, right? But so I agree to these things. I really wasn't worried about it at all in that heavenly realm. I will tell you, I just thought, okay, I've got this. Yeah, sure. Come back in. I fall off the ladder. I hit the back of my head on the corner of the granite island. I had a 5.5-inch skull fracture, a brain bleed. I lost my equilibrium, my taste, my smell, and part of my hearing. What they find is I literally survived the fall by 1/2 inch because that was the difference of what I missed my brainstem by.
Wow.
And that was how much the angel had moved my head.
I find a lot of the common themes in NDEs is where when the angels and loved ones do come, they'll say you have a choice. And that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that we do have choice.
Yes.
I guess, a lot of times with something like you were talking about divorce or your partner's suicide, I mean, those are tragic things to go through. But with a divorce, I think sometimes if the person who's being abused or being treated horribly, they're taking their power back.
Yeah.
The divorce is a hard thing to go through, but at the end of the day, they feel this sense of relief, like they can fly again because they have their power back. And that's what I tell people. Unfortunately, some people think there's no way out but to take their life due to suicide. And I try to tell them there are other pathways to choose from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really believe that this lifetime is about a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? So people cross our paths and maybe we fall in love. It doesn't mean we're meant to spend our whole life with them. The reason, the season, the lifetime. And there are some people that will travel this whole path with us, and that's a true blessing. But there's not a lot that are meant to be with you on your whole life path.
Nope. sometimes that's a misnomer. And I wrote here as you were talking, the things that happen like divorce, partner suicide, that injury, those horrible things. I with cancer, and when I had my colon removed, my open heart surgery, rather than be a victim to it, I thought, no, I will not be a victim to this. I will not be a victim to coronary artery disease. In other words, I will not become the disease. I will not become cancer. And I asked myself, what lessons is there for me to learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
And with cancer, I felt so out of control that the only thing I could control, I told the surgeon, and she looks a lot like you, by the way. She's just wonderful, a wonderful human being. And I said, the only thing I can control is to be a champion patient. And, I want to get up and I want to walk and I want to blah, blah, blah. I mean, I wanted to do more than what they even advised.
Yeah.
And because that's the only thing I could control.
Exactly. And that is what spirit tells me all the time. Very often in this life, our free will is our perception. Your perception is free will in action. How are you going to choose to see the situation? Because you might not have a choice in what happened, but you do have a choice in how you see it and how you act.
Well, I never got down to, that horrible thing, that cancer, that horrible thing that happened to me. I was like, no. What I did do is I thought, well, if people are newly diagnosed, and on my YouTube channel, if people contact me that they're especially newly diagnosed with oropharyngeal cancer, I'll call them. I do a free session. I'll talk them through it. Here's what I went through. Your journey will be different, but you don't have to be a victim to this, even though it's happening. It's not denying it.
Mm-hmm.
So all those lessons I learned, I share them. I don't think that's why I don't think that's why I got cancer. It could have been genetic. Who knows? Mine was caused from human papillomavirus. That's very
Mm-hmm.
common nowadays. But I figured, you take the lemon and you make lemonade.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and that's exactly, you know, I would have never thought in a million years that I would have had oropharyngeal cancer. But when I found that bleeding back there, I just knew.
Mm-hmm.
With my colon, I just knew. It wasn't cancer, thank goodness. But all of those uh, life, I don't want to say life threatening, but serious things I've had, here again, what's the lesson in it? And how can I use that to help other people?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what this life comes down to. We're all having a human experience where we're going to have different challenges, some similar, some extremely different. But how do we use this situation to learn and grow ourselves first and foremost, and then secondly to help others with it?
Aiden wrote some questions here. They're wonderful questions, and I'm kind of following that, but I'm kind of coming up with my own too. But one of them I think we just answered, and it says, you connect with angels, guides, and loved ones on the other side. What's one message that you find people most need to hear right now? And in my case, is tell them to stop becoming a victim, to speak up, and to surround people with love. And it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to say we can't treat people poorly, and many times we need to awaken that warrior spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even give it a little bit of a different spin, similar but different. I would say words like command your energy, right? Don't let your mind go crazy and run off and tell you stories. Command it, command your power, command the life that you want to live.
Focus it.
Yes.
Focus it.
Mm-hmm.
I really am a strong believer in that. Okay. um, I think we live in a culture where people are so afraid of dying, uh, that we forget to live. And that's what I tell people. I have people that come in and they're the world's worst hypochondriacs. They think every little thing is life threatening. And then we explore, okay, what's causing your guilt? And that, how does that transfer to thinking you're ill, and other reasons as well. But I tell them, you're so busy worried about being sick that you're forgetting to live.
Yeah.
And, um, you know, there's an old saying in the South where I come from. I'm from Kentucky originally, and it's like, if I die and go to hell, I'll be too busy shaking hands with all my friends to worry. And if I go to heaven, I got nothing to worry about anyway. So that's what I end up telling people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our souls came here for the experience. And this life in the scope of eternity, even if you make it to 80 or 100, it's just the blink of an eye. So be present, enjoy it, let yourself have a good time. So often I see people who deny themselves joy or happiness for dumb reasons. They show up somewhere, I'm in a bad mood. Why? I hit 5 red lights. Well, okay, you're going to give that your power over instead of just being like, oh, I hit 5 red lights. Let's go have lunch. You know what I mean? It's like bring your energy back. You have choices that you get to make every day. You get to choose to be happy, sad. It's not about bypassing your feelings. When I was in deep grief over Gary's transition, I couldn't bypass it. I had to feel it and move through it. But prolonging your opportunity to be happy or find joy again or share a laugh with someone, you get no extra bonus points in heaven if you live the most miserable life possible.
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people think, well, if I make myself suffer, that'll bring me closer to God. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. There are no bonus points. There are no more jewels in your crown. My mom used to say that. When something would happen, she'd be like, "Well, it's one more jewel in my crown when I get to heaven." And I remember being like, What? What are you saying? Like, I don't understand."
No, I totally agree with that. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, um, let's see. Uh, oh, this is a good one. I'm glad you put this in here because this happens to me all the time. That when people are in grief, they come and they'll be like, my husband, my child. I mean, I think the most horrible thing is for a parent to lose a child, no matter how old that child.
Agreed.
And they're in terrible grief, and they'll be like, I'm asking them for a sign, but they're not giving me anything. And my first response is, well, it doesn't hit you over the head like a ton of bricks, and it's not going to be like we're talking to each other. Have
Yeah.
you told them? Well, no. Have you? Sometimes I think maybe the loved ones on the other side think maybe it's too painful for the person left behind, and maybe they don't come for that person left behind's greater good. It doesn't mean that they've been abandoned.
Right.
And I think a lot of people who come in, well, they haven't shown up to me, they haven't done this, they haven't do that. Some of those people have real abandonment issues in life anyway. And
Mhm.
I've learned how to kind of navigate around that. So what would you to say to somebody? Let's say I'm your client. If I say, you know, Mary Jane Jim Bob passed away, and Mary Jane Jim Bob has not come to me. Why? And how would you handle that?
Yeah, very similar to what you're saying. First of all, our loved ones on the other side are not all sending the same signs. So, one, you could be missing whatever sign it is that they're sending you. Maybe it's not a white feather every single day on your doormat or something that, we want. The other thing is that the communication and the connection and the love obviously transcends death as our human sees it, right? But what we're learning is a new love language. A lot of times that's telepathic. A lot of times that's them just dropping an image of them in your head. Maybe you smell them. Here's one thing that I will tell you as a medium and as a human who's had loved ones transition. I don't think on this earth plane we ever get over missing having them in their body. I do not, and I don't know any client that I have that does. So that's part of this human condition, but it doesn't mean the connection, the love, and the communication has ended. The other thing that I would say is let's talk about levels of grief, because for you and I to connect with spirit, we have to raise our energy, raise our vibration, spirit lowers theirs, and then we make a connection. When we are in deep grief, when we are in depression, when we are heavy, that's a deep, dense energy, which makes it even harder to connect with spirit world.
Right. I tell them the same thing. Pay attention to the subtle things. Like,
Mhm.
did you think of them? Well, I think of them all the time. Well, maybe that's them letting you know they're around. Well, no, that's just normal. Mm, I'm saying, no, you have to rearrange your expectations of what it's like when they do contact you. And I
Yeah.
think if they miss them, and I tell people, it's not like you can hug them like we can hug each other here, but they are hugging you with their energy.
Yes.
And they're like, well, I don't get that. And I'm like, okay, electricity. If there's no lights on and you're in the middle of nowhere trying to talk to a tribe who's never seen or experienced electricity, how do you explain it? You don't have a flashlight, you don't have anything. It's an energy. Now, if
Right.
you put your finger in a wall socket, you'll feel it, but otherwise, it's an energy. And I try to explain it like that. And,
Yeah.
um, one person said, "Well, I want my finger in the wall socket." And I said, "I don't think so."
Yeah. Well, I would agree. I would also say our loved ones in spirit world see the higher plan. So if they know that them, let's say, if we feel them next to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is actually keeping us more stuck in our grief
It would be
instead of
too
helping
much.
us
That's right.
move forward, they're going to pull their energy back a little bit because they want us to continue to live. One of the things that I really feel called to say right now is your loved one is not sitting on a park bench in an empty heaven waiting for you. You know, so often people have this idea like he didn't want to die. He is sitting alone in Central Park just waiting for me to get to heaven. No, they are living. They are vibrant. They are happy. They are connected. And they
Right.
want that for us too.
And I tell people sometimes if they would come to you when you're in this state, it might be too traumatic for you,
Yeah.
and they don't want that. They it's okay to grieve, but
Hmm.
that's something you have to work through. And them coming to you is not going to ease that grief. It might make it worse.
Absolutely.
You know. Okay. Let's see. Give me 1 second.
Hmm.
Oh, Aiden just texted me. He said, "Funny you picked that. Mary Jane was my grandmother's name."
Of course it was. I love
Well,
that.
grandma must have had a good sense of humor or something.
Yeah.
Hello, Grandma Mary Jane. I wonder if she baked because when he gave me her name, I'm smelling this wonderful smell of bread and baking and all kinds of
Mhm.
things. So I like it when they come through like that. My Clare aroma opens up.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Um, um, this is a good one. People ask me if I'm always psychic. In our grocery store here, it's called the Jewel or Jewel, and it's not like some psychics on TV when they're out shopping. They're saying, "I'm seeing this for you." It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Um, so when I'm shopping at the grocery store, I'm planning my menu and what I'm going to make for dinner or what I'm going to make tomorrow or the next day. I'm not thinking about unless something really profound happens. And people will say, "Why is it that psychics always predict tragedy or these cataclysmic events?" And my answer is, well, we don't always predict those things, but psychic energy is fueled by an emotion. So if it has a high emotional charge, we're going to hook into that more. It could be a happy event, it could be a tragedy, it could be a cataclysmic event. That's why. That at least is my explanation about it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're tapping into the energy of what is most likely going to happen.
Well, my friend Peter Herkels, he's in spirit now. He was the psychic that worked on the Boston Strangler case and the Sharon Tate murders. He said that we were surrounded by what he called this odic force. And it's like this, almost like a jello that surrounds all of us.
Hmm.
Any event causes ripples in that. And some of us are open to perceiving those ripples. And if it's some kind of big event, it causes like tsunami ripples that hits us. So, and that's the way I explain it because I think that explains it pretty well,
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
isn't it? All right, that was his analogy, not mine. Let's see. Let me take a look here. So when I'm working back to that, it's not like I'm always psychic. It's like I don't want it to go all the time.
Right.
I mean, we can have just because we're spiritual doesn't mean we can't have fun. We can't go out and dance. We can't go out and laugh. We can't travel. We do all those things. We live in this world, and one of the lessons of living in this world is to enjoy it.
Yes. to have the human experience. And
Yep.
if you were walking around connected all the time, it's kind of like a doctor going through the grocery store trying to diagnose everyone. You look like you have liver issues. We need to get your kidneys checked. We need to, we don't expect doctors to do that, right?
Right.
Just like you and I, when we go to the grocery store, people need to eat dinner. There are things that need to happen. So we have to allow ourselves to have the human experience, which we came here for too.
Or people see me when I'm out and they're like, "Are you Mel?" And I go, "Yeah, hi. Oh my goodness, I saw you on YouTube or whatever." And they'll put their hand out and they'll say, "What do you see for me?" And I'll say, "Well, an appointment. Here's my phone number." Because I think they don't realize that, outside of our work, that we have lives as well.
Yeah.
And I'm always very gracious and very nice, always. And I'm so thankful for my supporters on YouTube. But I think it's important to have conversations like we're having, so it gives people insight into our lives and our work. I think it's very important. And I don't think enough of that's going on.
I agree. It is. I mean, we have to be able to function with our families, our friends, our daily life too, and enjoy this experience.
Most psychics that I know, the ones we all have intuitive ability. I use the word psychic, intuition, mediumship all interchangeably,
Yeah.
but we all have it. But the ones of us who have it stronger than others, I call the gift. But those of us who have the gift, many of us have had colorful pasts. Many of us have danced on a few bars, closed a few. uh, you know, uh, Many of us have really good senses of humor. Some of us have struggled with addictions. Uh, but here again, it's the lessons that we learn from going through those things
Yeah.
and how we apply it to help others. That's what life is all about, in my opinion.
hmm in all of my NDEs, there's always a common theme. This lesson, this life, it's about love. And it's how do we love ourselves and love each other through these human challenges and situations.
Right. Now, how many books have you written?
So I've written one, which is behind me back here. It's 101 Ways to Set Your Soul on Fire. I have
Ooh.
another one coming out on 11/1. It's 111 angel messages. And I'm wrapping up my memoir this month.
So if they want to get these books, how do they do so?
On Amazon. So 101 Ways to Set Your Soul on Fire is on Amazon right now. And it's really like daily messages. These are channeled messages from Spirit. The angel one will come out on November 1st, also on Amazon. And those are channeled messages from angels. And then my memoir should be wrapping up this month.
Would you say some of that is done through automatic writing? I love to do automatic writing.
Yeah, it really is. It's really about just letting the messages flow.
Yeah, it's not like something takes over your hand like the thing on the Addams Family. It's just like we just get in that zone and the messages flow and you just jot them down.
Yeah.
All right. So if people want to watch your videos, get a reading, how do they find you?
Yes, please go to my website, MichelleClare, CLARE.net. You can book readings there. You can go to my events page and see what I have coming up online or in person. And then also every Monday morning, I do Mondays with Michelle on my YouTube channel where I answer questions live. So you can put questions in the chat and we just kind of go through and answer questions.
I do mornings with Mel. So
I love that.
I really want to do this again.
I do too.
This has been so much fun. So your YouTube channel, what is that again?
It's Michelle Clare.
Okay.
And please, go like and subscribe. But we will absolutely do this again because it's been such a pleasure with you, Mel.
Thanks. It's a lot of fun to step out of, some of the other things that we talk about on YouTube. And I always like to talk about doing our work and what's that's like and those messages as well. Because as I said earlier, a lot of people, they don't understand what it's like. They just think that we're always like that, and it's not true. On my trips, I tell people one thing I can assure you is you'll have fun. And, people see me laughing. I'm working. I'm making sure everybody's having a good time. I'm always doing head counts. I'm telling people to be on time. I'm like the mother hen.
Mhm.
Primarily, I want people to be safe. but it's funny that uh, well, even on YouTube, I think people get to see a glimpse of the real Mel because I'm just Mel. But when they see me, like swearing and like,
Right.
so we're people the same as everybody else, and we come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do this again. This is so much fun and upbeat and enlightening, and I think that's part of what the work is all about.
Absolutely. I have greatly enjoyed my time with you. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to doing this again soon.
I love it. And I want to thank Aiden. Aiden, you want to come front and center because he's been backstage. He arranged all of this. We can't see you, Aiden. There you are. Aiden, so when are you getting back to your work?
Well, I love being able to, gather people that I really appreciate and value and have them have conversations. I think that that's the whole fun of YouTube. And, I've worked with both of you, and I think that you guys both align on a lot of topics and conversations. So I'm glad I got to sit here and watch all that play out. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really fun, and I'm glad that you guys want to do it again.
I really, really want to schedule one very, very soon. I'm leaving next week for France. And then beginning of November, I've got Benicia with Linda Grindle. And then I'm free after that. So I would really like to schedule, maybe regularly, let's do something. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I am 100% in on that.
All right, you got it. Anyway, okay. So once again, Michelle, how do they get a hold of you?
Michelle Clare, CLARE.net.
Well,
Aiden, some of your viewers might have seen him with me. He helps me on my Mondays with Michelle show. He is a godsend, honestly.
He really is. I can call him at the last minute and he's right there. I couldn't do it without Aiden. I just reached 100,000 subscribers and I could not have done it without him. So
Congratulations.
thank you. You'll get there. You'll get there.
I'll take it.
All right. So everybody, thank you so very, very much. I've been gone for a while because I've been traveling, but what a great way to get back into things after a wonderful trip, talking to somebody in our community who does the work and a wonderful person as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.